Welcome back everyone. We are back for another mixed fix video. These videos I think are actually some of the more important videos because we're going to see errors that my opponents or even me make sometimes, and these I think are just the easy fix. So if you're playing in mixed games and you find yourself making one of these mistakes, if you clear up these mistakes, I honestly think this is probably one of the easiest ways to increase your win rate. So this first one here is an Omaha 8 or better hand. It's going to be against two opponents. One's Moxie and the other one in the big blind here is Bonobo. But the main objective here is going to be Moxie and his hand and the way he plays it. So we're going to start here by rolling the video. I'm in the cutoff here with the King Deuce 4-5. I have 3 wheel cards and suited king. I open this hand. And it's going to go to Moxie, who decides to call. And then Bonobo, I believe, is also going to call. And the flop here, we flop basically without flopping something, a made hand. This is basically one of the biggest flops we can get. We flop a wheel wrap and a king high flush draw. So almost against any hand here, we're going to be a favorite on this flop. So we definitely want to be putting in as much money as we can. Checks to us. We're going to bet. This flop is also very good for my range. I tend to have a lot of aces, a lot of wheel cards, everything else like that. Turn's a king. And again, we just have so much equity on this turn card, including now I have some other ways to win if I make like trip kings. If I do make 2 pair like kings up, I make a wheel anyways. But I'm pushing so much equity with my flush draw and my wheel wrap that if check 2 here, I think this becomes a clear bet again. So we're going to bet. And now Moxie raises. And Bonobo folds. And we call. And the first thing here is I'm going to have this hand on in a later date with someone reviewing this hand. But I also think there's some, to not focus so much on this hand, there is sometimes in this situation I think you want to consider 3-betting. Against this specific player, I don't think this is correct, just because this is more of a personal read. I've played a lot of hands with him, so in this situation, like I don't think, I think I just have to make my hand to win, which is kind of interesting. And then the river's a king. So again, I'm going to do some hand analysis here. I tanked and used like the majority of my time bank in this situation, so I'm actually going to skip ahead 30 seconds. Oh, played the wrong one. Hold on. So I'm going to skip ahead, and I tanked for almost 30 seconds whether to decide to call or fold, because I just don't think that in this situation here my 3 kings are very good. Plus, I have a lot of the blockers that he wants to be check raising with. Like if he has a super draw hand like hearts and a wheel draw, this is the type of hand on the turn here I think that he wants to be considering like semi-bluffing with and trying to get me to fold like aces up. But since I have that exact combo and he's check raising me, I think he's much more likely to have a high hand. We'll like I said, we'll get to this hand on a later date. But the fix here specifically for Moxie is Moxie has ace, ace, 8, 6 in the small blind. And when I raise the cutoff, and he has 2 aces with 2 low cards. First off, I don't think there's a combination of aces he should not be 3-betting. You can make the case that a hand like ace, ace, 9, 10, rainbow is a hand that he could consider flat calling pre-flop, but I just don't think there's any aces that we really want to cold call, because this type of aces hand is specifically like this ace 8, 6, 8 hand where it's got some low cards, but those low cards don't necessarily play well multi-way. This hand wants to play against my hand heads up, or my range specifically heads up. So Moxie here should be 3-betting, I would say, like all of his aces in this spot and trying to get this pot heads up. On the flop too, when he flops 3 aces and I go ahead and bet, I think that again Moxie has the nut high plus an emergency low draw, just because he doesn't like block wheel draws, or he has 1 heart in his hand too, which also helps him a little bit. Like he should be going ahead and trying to check raise. The fact that he kind of gets this like random run out where it goes king king and I have 3 kings in my hand, where he gets, paid off is kind of just, I would say, a small. It just doesn't happen like that much. So in this situation here, like he wants to be isolating my hand with 3 aces, an emergency low, And if Bonobo calls like comes along, that's totally fine. I mean, he has a ton of equity in this hand with 3 aces, but the fix for this hand, the easy fix for this hand, is just to go ahead and 3-bet it pre-flop, and then if he does find himself in this spot on the flop, checking, and then the player in position here bets, he should just definitely go ahead and check raise with 3 aces and an emergency low draw there. Again, I'll get to this hand later on at a different date, but I just wanted to talk about this specific one. So that was the first hand. Find the second hand here in a second. All right, hand 2 here is another limit Omaha 8 or better hand, and this hand we're on the button with 6-6-3-4 double suited. This is I would say a sneaky strong hand in this game, like the double suited connected with a low pair type of hand. And usually these type of hands are pretty much like re-raises from almost any position. Again, these hands play well heads up. They do play okay multi-way, but if you can get the hand heads up, this is important. And again, this will also be featured on another one in the future, but I want to talk about like the easy fix here if you're not doing this. So Bonobo raises under the gun. We're 5-handed. I 3-bet button here with 6-6-3-4. Moxie comes along, and then Bonobo calls, and we flop pretty strong here. I would say we flop pretty strong mediocrely. Like we have a flush draw, we have a low wrap, we have a low draw, we do have 2 6s. So specifically, I'm going to stop the video I think after the flop, but what happens here is we have a ton of equity. We don't have like it's not like we have ace deuce 8-6 with nut spades. That would be the super nutty draw, or like ace deuce 10-10 with nut spades. But our hand has a lot of equity in multiple different ways. So this is a hand where we're going to go here, where I 3-bet pre-flop, and now given the fact I flop really well, I go ahead and bet when check to, and then Moxie goes ahead and calls, and then Bonobo decides to check raise. Now, I've seen some people in this situation too, and if you're not familiar, like decide to cold call here. The thing is like, if you can get the third person to fold, usually a hand like this where you have extra low cards, a wrap, a flush draw, you're going to gain the majority of the equity, I believe, in your hand by getting him out of the pot. And I think a lot of people still, like with like a mediocre low, mediocre flush draw, etc., will still call in this situation. But I think what you want to do is you want to, if you can, push this other player out of the pot. So what we do here is we decide to 3-bet and try to clear up some equity and get this pot heads up, and then we get to play this hand in position. And that's exactly what happens. Moxie folds and Bonobo calls, and we turn it straight. So I'm going to save this video for a different analysis on a different day. But again, I want to point out where if like Bonobo here like decides to check raise like a flush draw with a low draw, or like say a 10 with ace deuce, or some sort of straight draw with ace deuce, our hand is doing fine against that range. But if Moxie decides to come along where he has like maybe a better flush draw, or he's got like maybe 2 raggedy pair, or an overcard with a straight overpair with a straight draw, something like that, if we get him to fold those type of hands, it's very beneficial for us. We clean up equity, we have position the entire hand, and we can decide how we play from there. And I think that is another one of those ways where you can significantly benefit and improve your EV by taking advantage of those situations like split block games where we clear out the extra opponent and play heads up. All right, that was hand 2. I'm going to find the last one, hand 3. All right, and this last one here is a Badesi hand. So again, Badesi is ace to 5 triple draw with a Badugi, meaning there's always 2 pots. The first pot is going to be ace to 5 low, meaning 5-4-3-2-1 is the best low hand, and 4-3-2-1 rainbow is the best Badugi. With that in mind, we're going to see this one play out here. I am not in this hand, however, I am going to describe this one. So on the button here, Mel. Mel's going to open up, and Joke's going to call, and they're going to be heads up. And on the first draw, oh, sorry. To be honest, I'm trying to find a little better hand, but I couldn't go back in my history and necessarily find where it was at. But the lesson here, I think, is also important. So it's going to go 2-2 on the first draw. Goes check. Sped this up a little bit. Mel bets. Joke check calls and draws 2 again. Mel's pat. And Joke now check calls. He draws 1. And Mel pats again. And then Joke checks. I believe Mel's going to check this one back. Yeah, Mel checks this one back. Okay, so Mel here on the button has a 10 low and a 9 Badugi. Now, it's very important, and the distinction here is what his 9 is. So his 9 Badugi is 9-4-2-1. Now, if you look up here and you look at Joke's Badugi, his hand is, his Badugi is 9-5-4-1. So it's slightly different. Now, when you're in position in these situations, like Mel raised on the button here, and most likely his holding was ace-4 deuce rainbow. Now, Joke called, and he probably had some combination. He probably had like something like ace-4-5 rainbow as well. And forget the strategy of what he should do in the small blind. That's just his hand. But when Mel raises the button, he basically has the best Badugi in position here when he has ace deuce 4. So when it goes 2-2 on the first draw, if he elects to keep the 9 Badugi, it's okay. But at the same time, too, ace 4 deuce is somewhat the same hand with against like a rough Badugi. Like if Mel has like a queen Badugi in this situation, or maybe a jack, basically an ace 4 deuce is the same thing, meaning that his 3 card, if you don't make a Badugi in any of these games like Badusi, Badasi, or Badugi, the best 3 card is going to get the Badugi half the pot. So I see players in general, they tend to pat early rougher Badugis, and there are certain situations, like if Mel makes an 8 here, I think that's just an easy keep the Badugi. When he makes a 9 here, I think it's somewhat debatable. The reason why is the 9's not really very playable, meaning like if he pats the Badugi, if he keeps the Badugi the first draw and then on the second draw he gets check raised, he's in a really tricky situation. And I see this a lot with beginning players when they first start playing Badugi. I was looking for a specific hand that I couldn't find where, say a player like opens the button, they have a Badugi, they have like ace deuce 3 king, and the big blind calls and draws 2. Well, in that situation, the king is basically the exact same thing as the ace deuce 3. There's no change. Like, you have the lead with ace deuce 3, you're pushing almost the same amount of equity. By keeping the king, you're just hopefully denying equity to the random hand where your opponent makes a king, a worse king, and they win. And again, I'm trying to think if it's the conditional probability, but basically the parlay of that happening is just so small that you break your king, they make a better king, and win is so tiny. Plus, there's also playability factors too. When you have like close setups and equity, a lot of times you want to increase your variance and go for the one that's going to win you more money. So in a situation where you have ace deuce 3, you want to be able to draw 1 if your opponent's drawing 2, because you can still win at showdown very easily with an ace deuce 3, and you can make a wheel, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, even a 9 in those situations where those hands are so much more playable. So in Mel's position here, I wanted to show a hand where like he could keep the 9 in position, but at the same time too, like the ace deuce 4 is almost the same thing. Not to mention here, he should definitely break the 10. The 10 should never be pat in this situation. There's situations where you want to kind of quick pat your hand, but I don't think this is one, because again, like if his hand, say here, he decided to open something like 5, 6, 7 rainbow, and then he catches a 9 Badugi, and then he catches another 10. That to me is a hand where he can quick pat that hand, and that's totally fine. Because if his opponent breaks, he like gets him to fold. But this type of hand right here is doing very well. It draws very well. It's pushing equity with the 3-card rainbow. I don't think you want to try and quick pat this hand. And again, I wish I could have found the specific hand with like the King Badugi, because I think those are the specific spots in this situation where you want to consider, you almost always want to break your really like your bad Badugis, but with smooth draws, because you still have equity in the hand. Deuce to 7 is slightly different, where if you have say like if you have a 9 low in position and a wheel draw, you know, you have a little bit more equity by keeping the 9 sometimes, but you gain more equity by playing a hand where you can make a really solid hand and get extra bets on later streets. But in Badugi, you basically have the same hand sometimes when you actually have a Badugi, but your 3-card is a premium one. Now, I would say, like if Mel here had a 3-card 5 or a 3-card 6, very similar to what Joke has here, like say the hands were flipped and Mel on the button here has like, he makes this hand on the first draw. He makes the 9 and 9-9. I actually think patting the 9-9 in position here after the first draw is okay. I think that with Mel's hand though, when he's got a 3-card 4, that he should most likely be breaking the 9. And even if he decides to keep the 9, he should throw the 10 away. I think the 10 is kind of an irrelevant card in this hand, but I just want to point that out. But when you're playing these Badugi games, for the most part, if you have a smooth draw and your opponent is not pat, you usually gain more by breaking and drawing to the smoother hand, because there's more playability and you can make more money on a later street. If anybody wants some clarification on that, because again, I wish I definitely had the exact hand where like when my opponent has like ace deuce 3 king, or even in that factor like ace deuce 3 queen, it's kind of the same thing. Like I think if you raise the button with ace deuce 3 queen or king Badugi and your opponent calls and draws 1 or draws 2, I think we should be throwing away the king and the queen, and just kind of like realizing even more equity by drawing and increasing the variance, because we draw to a better hand that way. But yeah, as always, if you guys like what you see, like, subscribe, comment down below. If you like this format, please let me know. Again, I think this is one of the more beneficial series that I'm going to do, because it shows a lot of the beginning players how to clean up mistakes and drastically improve your EV. If you guys are looking to open a Phenom account, there's a link below. And yeah, if you guys, again, I still have the free review open, so if anyone wants to record an hour in Phenom and send it to me, I will review it and put it up on YouTube and get it back to you. But until then, I wish you guys all the best and luck at the tables. Play well. Good luck. Bye-bye.